Keanu Reeves walked into the brightly lit studio, his signature calmness masking any hint of nerves. The late-night talk show was one of the most popular programs on television, known for its sharp humor and provocative interviews. Hosted by a liberal commentator who had made a name for herself with bold statements and unapologetic opinions, the show often pushed guests to their limits. Keanu, however, wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. He was there to promote his latest project, a highly anticipated action film that had already generated buzz weeks before its release. Dressed in his usual laid-back style, he took a seat across from the host, flashing a polite smile as the audience erupted into applause. The host greeted him warmly at first, complimenting his work ethic and timeless appeal. She joked about how he seemed to defy aging, and Keanu chuckled along, brushing off the comment with characteristic humility. For the first few minutes, everything went smoothly. They discussed his career, his journey in Hollywood, and even touched on his love for motorcycles. The conversation felt light and easy, drawing laughter from both the host and the audience. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. The host had a reputation for steering interviews toward controversial topics, and tonight would be no exception. As the segment progressed, she began to shift gears. Her tone changed ever so slightly, becoming more probing and less playful. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes narrowing as if zeroing in on her next target. "So, Keanu," she said, her voice dripping with curiosity, "let's talk about your personal life for a moment." Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. He knew where this might lead, but he stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. The host didn't disappoint. With a sly grin, she brought up his girlfriend, a talented actress admired by many for her kindness and authenticity. "You two seem like such a perfect couple," she said, pausing dramatically. "But some people have wondered, are you sure it's all as real as it looks?" The room fell eerily quiet. Even the usually enthusiastic audience seemed unsure how to react. Keanu blinked slowly, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. He wasn't surprised that his relationship had come up. It was inevitable given the nature of the show, but the way she phrased her question left little room for subtlety. It wasn't just idle curiosity. It was an accusation cloaked in casual language. The host pressed on, clearly relishing the tension she had created. "I mean, come on, Keanu," she said with a smirk, leaning back in her chair now. "We've seen so many celebrity couples fall apart after the cameras stop rolling. Are you telling me this is different? Or is it just another chapter in the Hollywood playbook?" For a moment, Keanu simply stared at her, his dark eyes unwavering. He didn't fidget or glance away, choosing instead to hold her gaze steadily. His silence spoke volumes, though the host didn't seem to notice, or perhaps she didn't care. She continued undeterred, her voice growing more pointed with each word. "Because let's face it, relationships in the spotlight are tricky. People always wonder, is it real? Is it staged? And honestly, can we blame them for asking?" The audience murmured among themselves, some nodding in agreement while others looked uncomfortable. A few members shifted in their seats, sensing that the tone of the interview had taken a turn they hadn't anticipated. Keanu finally broke his silence, though not in the way anyone expected. Instead of offering a rehearsed response or deflecting the question with humor, he chose honesty. "You know," he began, his voice soft but steady, "when you say things like that, it makes me think about why we're here in the first place." He paused, letting his words sink in. The host raised an eyebrow, intrigued but also wary. She hadn't planned for him to take control of the narrative, and it showed. Keanu continued, speaking slowly and deliberately. "We're supposed to be talking about movies, about storytelling, about creativity. Those are the things that bring people together. But when we start dissecting someone's private life, someone who isn't even here to speak for themselves, it feels wrong." His words carried weight, resonating with everyone in the room. The host opened her mouth to respond, but Keanu wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Think about it," he said, addressing not just the host but also the audience watching at home. "Why do we feel the need to question everything? Why do we assume the worst until proven otherwise? Relationships are complicated enough without adding speculation and judgment into the mix. His tone remained calm, but there was an undercurrent of emotion beneath his words. It was clear that he cared deeply about the topic, and about protecting the person he loved. The host faltered, caught off guard by his response. She tried to recover, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer territory, but the damage was done. The energy in the room had shifted entirely. What had started as a lighthearted chat about movies and fame had morphed into something far more profound. Keanu's refusal to play along with her agenda had exposed a deeper truth, one that resonated with viewers around the world. As the segment drew to a close, the host thanked him awkwardly, clearly eager to move on to the next guest. But for Keanu, the night was far from over. Backstage, as he prepared to leave, Keanu reflected on what had just happened. He hadn't intended to make headlines or spark controversy. All he wanted was to share his work with the world. Yet in standing up for his beliefs, and for the woman he loved, he had done exactly that. Little did he know the impact of his words would ripple far beyond the confines of the studio, sparking conversations that would dominate social media and news outlets for days to come. For now, though, he simply smiled politely at the crew, thanked them for their hard work, and stepped out into the cool night air, ready to put the evening behind him. As Keanu stepped out of the studio, he felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The confrontation with the host had been unexpected, but it was over now, or so he thought. Little did he know that his words were already making waves far beyond the live audience. Social media platforms began buzzing almost instantly, with clips of the interview spreading like wildfire. Viewers who had tuned in casually were now sharing their thoughts, many praising Keanu for his calm and composed response. Keanu shut her down respectfully. One tweet read, "This is why we love him," another commented. Memes and hashtags celebrating his poise quickly trended, turning what could have been an awkward moment into a defining one. Meanwhile, back in the studio, the host was scrambling to regain control of the narrative. Her attempt to shift focus to lighter topics during the remainder of the show fell flat, as the audience remained visibly unsettled by the earlier exchange. Some viewers noticed how she avoided eye contact with Keanu after his pointed remarks, while others picked up on her forced laughter as she introduced the next guest. It was clear that the interview had not gone as planned, not for her, at least. As the credits rolled and the cameras turned off, the production team exchanged nervous glances. They knew this wouldn't end quietly. Controversies like this always found a way to linger. The next morning, Keanu woke up to a flood of notifications on his phone. Friends and colleagues had sent messages congratulating him on handling the situation with grace. Reporters reached out, asking for statements or follow-up interviews. At first, Keanu considered ignoring it all. He wasn't one to seek attention, especially when it came to personal matters. But as the hours passed, he realized the conversation had taken on a life of its own. News outlets dissected every word he'd said, framing it as a rare moment of accountability in modern media. Talk shows debated whether the host had crossed a line, while opinion pieces explored the ethics of scrutinizing celebrities' private lives. Despite the growing buzz, Keanu stayed true to himself. When reporters pressed him for comment, he kept his responses brief and thoughtful. "I just want people to remember that relationships are about trust and respect," he said in one interview. "Speculation doesn't help anyone. It only creates unnecessary drama." His measured tone struck a chord with audiences, reinforcing the idea that he wasn't interested in fueling gossip. Instead, he used the opportunity to emphasize kindness and empathy, values he had long championed both publicly and privately. While Keanu handled the aftermath with dignity, the same couldn't be said for the host. Critics pounced on her handling of the interview, accusing her of prioritizing shock value over meaningful dialogue. Clips of her smirking remarks resurfaced online, drawing harsh reactions from viewers who felt she had disrespected Keanu's girlfriend without cause. Even some of her regular viewers admitted they were uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Calls for accountability grew louder, with petitions circulating online demanding an apology. For someone who prided herself on being ahead of the curve, the backlash hit hard. Amid the chaos, Keanu's girlfriend watched the events unfold from afar. She hadn't been present during the interview, but friends and fans alike rallied around her, defending her character against the baseless accusations. In a world where public figures often faced relentless scrutiny, having someone like Keanu stand up for her meant everything. Together, they decided to address the situation in their own way, not through angry rebuttals or dramatic gestures, but by continuing to live authentically. They attended a charity event later that week, smiling warmly as photographers captured their genuine connection. Their presence spoke louder than any statement ever could. As days turned into weeks, the story refused to fade. Late-night comedians joked about the incident, mimicking the host's smirk and Keanu's stoic expression. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to analyzing the dynamics of the interview, with hosts debating whether it marked a turning point in how celebrities navigated tough questions. Meanwhile, Keanu returned to work, throwing himself into his craft as he always did. On set, crew members couldn't resist teasing him gently about his newfound status as a symbol of integrity. He laughed it off, brushing aside the praise with his usual humility. Behind the scenes, however, the impact of that night continued to ripple outward. Media analysts noted a subtle shift in how similar interviews were conducted moving forward. Hosts became more cautious about crossing boundaries, aware that audiences valued respect above sensationalism. Even the talk show host at the center of the controversy seemed to adjust her approach, softening her tone in subsequent episodes. Whether intentional or not, Keanu's actions had sparked a broader conversation about decency and fairness in entertainment journalism. For Keanu, though, life went on much as it always had. He avoided dwelling on the incident, focusing instead on the things that truly mattered to him: his art, his loved ones, and the quiet moments that reminded him of life's beauty. Yet every now and then, he would catch a glimpse of a meme or hear a snippet of a podcast discussing the interview. Each time, he would shake his head slightly, amused by the spectacle, but grateful for the underlying message. In standing up for what he believed in, he had reminded people of something simple yet profound. Respect costs nothing, but its absence can leave lasting scars. As the days passed, the story of Keanu's live rebuttal continued to dominate headlines. It wasn't just the entertainment world that was talking about it. Mainstream news outlets also picked up on the incident, framing it as a pivotal moment in how public figures navigated tough interviews. Journalists dissected every detail of the exchange, from the host's provocative tone to Keanu's calm yet firm response. Some praised him for setting an example of restraint and integrity, while others criticized the host for overstepping boundaries. The debate spilled into living rooms, workplaces, and online forums, with people passionately arguing both sides. For Keanu, the attention was overwhelming but not entirely unfamiliar. Throughout his career, he had faced scrutiny and speculation, but this time felt different. It wasn't just about him. It was about standing up for someone he cared deeply about. He knew that relationships were private matters, not meant to be dissected under the harsh glare of public opinion. Yet here he was, thrust into the center of a media storm because of a question that never should have been asked. Despite the chaos, Keanu remained grounded. He focused on what mattered most, staying true to himself and protecting those he loved. The host, on the other hand, found herself at the center of intense criticism. Her reputation as a bold interviewer had always walked a fine line between daring and disrespectful, but this time, many felt she had crossed it. Social media users flooded her posts with comments accusing her of targeting Keanu's girlfriend unfairly. Some even called for advertisers to pull their support from her show. The pressure mounted as industry insiders weighed in, questioning whether her approach had gone too far. For someone who thrived on controversy, the backlash was unexpected and uncomfortable. Amid the growing tension, Keanu made a conscious decision not to engage further. He didn't release any fiery statements or appear on rival shows to criticize the host. Instead, he let his actions speak for themselves. When asked about the incident during press junkets for his new movie, he kept his responses brief and respectful. "I think we all have a responsibility to treat each other with kindness," he said simply. "That's all I was trying to do." His words resonated with audiences, reinforcing the idea that sometimes the best response is one rooted in empathy rather than anger. Meanwhile, the host attempted damage control. During her next episode, she addressed the controversy head-on, though her apology came across as half-hearted. She claimed her comments had been misinterpreted and insisted she had no intention of offending anyone. But viewers weren't convinced. Clips of her original remarks resurfaced online, highlighting the dismissive smirk and pointed phrasing that had sparked the uproar in the first place. Critics argued that her explanation lacked sincerity, and the negative feedback only intensified. For weeks, her name trended alongside hashtags calling for accountability and respect. While the media circus raged on, Keanu's girlfriend chose to stay out of the spotlight. She understood the nature of fame and the challenges that came with being in a relationship with someone as iconic as Keanu. Still, she couldn't help but feel grateful for the way he had defended her. In an era where personal lives were often treated like tabloid fodder, having someone stand up for you meant everything. Together, they leaned on their shared values, privacy, authenticity, and mutual respect, to navigate the storm. They attended events quietly, letting their presence serve as a testament to the strength of their bond. As the weeks turned into months, the conversation began to shift. What started as outrage over a single interview evolved into broader discussions about the ethics of celebrity journalism. Opinion pieces explored the fine line between curiosity and intrusion, asking whether the public's appetite for gossip justified the invasion of privacy. Some argued that celebrities signed up for scrutiny when they entered the public eye, while others insisted everyone deserved basic decency, regardless of their status. Keanu's stance became a rallying point for those advocating for more respectful coverage, proving that one person's actions could spark meaningful change. Despite the ongoing discourse, Keanu tried to keep things in perspective. He knew that fame came with its share of challenges, but he refused to let negativity consume him. On set, he poured his energy into his work, channeling his emotions into his performances. Off-screen, he spent time with loved ones, cherishing the moments that reminded him why he did what he did. Friends noticed how unfazed he seemed by the whirlwind surrounding him. "He's always been like that," one close friend remarked. "No matter what happens, he stays focused on what really matters." Even as the initial frenzy died down, the ripple effects of that night lingered. Late-night comedians continued to reference the interview in their routines, drawing laughs with exaggerated impressions of both Keanu and the host. Podcasts dedicated episodes to analyzing the dynamics of the exchange, debating whether it marked a turning point in how celebrities handled difficult questions. Meanwhile, aspiring journalists studied the incident as a case study in balancing boldness with sensitivity. For better or worse, the moment had become part of the cultural zeitgeist. Through it all, Keanu remained unchanged. He avoided dwelling on the past, choosing instead to focus on the present and future. When fans approached him to express admiration for how he handled the situation, he thanked them graciously but quickly changed the subject. To him, it wasn't about heroics or grand gestures. It was about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. And in a world that often celebrated noise over substance, his quiet dignity spoke volumes. As autumn gave way to winter, life slowly returned to normal, for Keanu at least. The media moved on to the next big story, leaving the incident behind. But its impact stayed with him, shaping the way he viewed his role as a public figure. He realized that sometimes standing up for what you believe in, even in small ways, could inspire others to do the same. And in a world that often felt chaotic and divided, that was a lesson worth holding on to. The months following the interview brought a mix of reflection and adjustment for everyone involved. For Keanu, life slowly began to settle back into its usual rhythm. The whirlwind of attention had died down, but the incident left a lasting impression, not just on him, but on those around him. Friends and colleagues noticed a subtle shift in how he approached interviews and public appearances. While he remained as polite and composed as ever, there was an added layer of caution in his interactions with the media. He started choosing his words more carefully, ensuring that his responses couldn't be twisted or misinterpreted. It wasn't about fear. It was about protecting himself and his loved ones from unnecessary drama. Keanu's girlfriend also found herself reflecting on the experience. Though she avoided the spotlight, she couldn't ignore the outpouring of support from fans who admired their relationship. Strangers sent messages praising her strength and grace, while others expressed gratitude for Keanu's defense of her character. At first, the attention made her uncomfortable, but over time she came to see it as a testament to the power of standing together. She realized that relationships weren't just about love. They were about partnership, trust, and mutual respect. Seeing Keanu stand up for her reaffirmed what she already knew. They were stronger together than apart. Meanwhile, the host faced ongoing challenges in rebuilding her reputation. Her attempts to move past the controversy were met with mixed results. Some viewers appreciated her acknowledgement of the backlash, while others felt her apology lacked sincerity. Ratings for her show dipped slightly, prompting network executives to question whether her confrontational style still resonated with audiences. Behind closed doors, meetings were held to discuss potential changes to the program's format. The host herself struggled to adapt, torn between staying true to her bold persona and addressing the concerns of critics. For someone who thrived on pushing boundaries, finding balance proved harder than she anticipated. As the debate over her conduct continued, the entertainment industry began to take note of the broader implications. Producers and journalists started reevaluating how they approached celebrity interviews. There was a growing recognition that sensationalism didn't always translate to success. In fact, it could alienate audiences if taken too far. Several prominent hosts announced plans to tone down their questioning styles, emphasizing empathy and respect. Even talk shows known for their edgy humor adopted a more measured approach, signaling a shift in the cultural landscape. Keanu's quiet yet powerful response had sparked a conversation that extended far beyond one awkward moment on live television. Despite the changes happening around him, Keanu stayed focused on his work. He threw himself into his next project, a gritty action film that required intense physical training and emotional depth. On set, he found solace in the familiar routine of rehearsals, stunts, and long hours under the hot lights. Acting had always been his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the noise of the outside world. His co-stars admired his dedication, often commenting on how he seemed completely unaffected by the recent media storm. "He doesn't let anything distract him," one actor remarked. "That's why he's so good at what he does." Off-screen, Keanu embraced moments of quiet reflection. He spent evenings reading scripts, practicing guitar, or taking long walks through the city streets. These simple pleasures reminded him of the things that truly mattered: creativity, connection, and peace of mind. Occasionally, he would scroll through social media to see updates about the ongoing discussion surrounding the interview. While he appreciated the support from fans, he couldn't help but feel uneasy about being labeled a hero. To him, he had simply done what anyone should, to stand up for someone they cared about. Yet he understood that people craved examples of integrity in a world that often celebrated spectacle over substance. For the host, the struggle to regain trust was ongoing. She experimented with new segments designed to highlight positivity and kindness, inviting guests who specialized in mental health awareness and community activism. While some praised her efforts, others remained skeptical, accusing her of performing damage control rather than genuine growth. Critics argued that real change required more than surface-level adjustments. It demanded accountability and consistency. Still, she persisted, determined to prove that she could evolve without losing the essence of who she was. As winter approached, the story gradually faded from the forefront of public consciousness. New scandals and controversies took its place, capturing the fleeting attention of the media cycle. But the lessons learned during those turbulent months lingered, shaping the way people thought about privacy, respect, and the responsibilities of fame. Keanu's actions served as a reminder that even small acts of courage could have a profound impact. They inspired conversations about boundaries, not just in Hollywood, but in everyday life. People began to think twice before jumping to conclusions or spreading rumors, realizing that words carried weight. Through it all, Keanu remained steadfast in his values. He refused to let the incident define him, focusing instead on living authentically and leading by example. When reporters asked about the aftermath, he responded with characteristic humility. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about treating people with kindness and respect no matter who they are." His words resonated deeply, reinforcing the idea that true strength lies in compassion, not confrontation. And though he never sought the spotlight for this moment, it became clear that his actions had touched countless lives in ways he might never fully understand. By the time spring arrived, the incident felt like a distant memory, for most people, anyway. Life moved forward as it always did, bringing new opportunities and challenges. But for Keanu, it remained a poignant reminder of the importance of staying grounded in a world that often prioritized noise over meaning. He carried the lessons of that night with him, letting them guide his choices and shape his perspective. And in doing so, he continued to inspire others, proving that sometimes the simplest gestures, like defending someone you love, can leave the deepest mark. As spring unfolded, the world seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The controversy that had once dominated headlines was now a distant memory for most, replaced by fresh stories and new scandals. Yet for Keanu Reeves, the experience continued to shape his perspective in subtle but meaningful ways. He didn't dwell on the past. Keanu wasn't the type to linger, but he couldn't ignore the lessons he had learned from that chaotic chapter. It taught him something important about resilience, integrity, and the power of standing firm in your beliefs, even when the world felt like it was spinning out of control. One of the biggest changes in Keanu's life was how he approached interviews. While he had always been cautious, the incident made him more deliberate in choosing which shows to appear on and what topics he was willing to discuss. He began setting clear boundaries before stepping into any studio, ensuring that hosts understood what was off limits. Surprisingly, many were receptive to his requests. They respected his professionalism and knew that pushing him too far would only reflect poorly on them. Over time, Keanu became known not just as an actor, but as someone who valued authenticity and mutual respect, a reputation that earned him admiration both within and outside the industry. For Keanu's girlfriend, the aftermath brought its own set of challenges and rewards. Though she preferred to stay away from the public eye, she found herself inspired by the support they had received. Fans often sent heartfelt messages praising their relationship, calling it a beacon of hope in a world filled with cynicism. She realized that while fame came with scrutiny, it also offered opportunities to spread positivity. Together, she and Keanu decided to channel some of their energy into charitable work, supporting causes close to their hearts. Whether it was donating to shelters or visiting children's hospitals, they embraced these moments quietly, letting their actions speak louder than words. Meanwhile, the host of the talk show struggled to find her footing in a rapidly changing landscape. Her attempts to reinvent herself yielded mixed results. Some viewers appreciated her efforts to highlight uplifting stories and bring attention to important issues, while others remained skeptical, accusing her of trying to polish a tarnished image. Critics pointed out that her occasional displays of kindness felt forced compared to her usual sharp-edged persona. Despite this, she persisted, determined to prove that she could adapt without losing the qualities that made her unique. Behind the scenes, she worked tirelessly with her team to strike a balance between boldness and sensitivity, a challenge that tested her resolve every day. The entertainment industry as a whole underwent a quiet transformation during this period. Producers and journalists took note of the shifting attitudes among audiences, recognizing that sensationalism no longer guaranteed success. Talk shows began adopting a gentler tone, focusing less on provoking guests and more on fostering genuine conversations. Even late-night comedians toned down their jabs, opting instead for humor rooted in wit rather than cruelty. This shift wasn't immediate. nor was it universal, but it signaled a growing awareness of the impact media could have on public perception and personal lives. Keanu's calm yet powerful response to the accusation had planted a seed, encouraging others to rethink their approach. Amid these changes, Keanu continued to pour his energy into his craft. His latest film premiered to glowing reviews, earning praise for its thrilling action sequences and emotional depth. Audiences marveled at his performance, noting how effortlessly he balanced vulnerability with strength. Backstage after premieres and screenings, fans lined up to thank him, not just for his movies, but for the way he carried himself in real life. "You remind us that kindness matters," one fan told him, clutching a poster signed with trembling hands. Keanu smiled warmly, humbled by their words. To him, it wasn't about being a role model. It was about living in alignment with his values. Despite the accolades, Keanu remained grounded. He avoided indulging in self-congratulation, instead focusing on what lay ahead. When asked about the future, he spoke candidly about his desire to keep growing, as an artist, as a person, and as someone committed to making a difference. "There's always room to learn and improve," he said in a rare interview. "I'm just trying to do my best, one day at a time." His humility struck a chord with listeners, reinforcing the idea that greatness isn't about perfection. It's about striving to be better. As summer approached, the conversation around privacy and respect in Hollywood reached new heights. Panels and podcasts dedicated entire episodes to discussing the ethics of celebrity journalism, using Keanu's experience as a case study. Experts debated whether stricter guidelines should be implemented to protect public figures from invasive questioning, while others argued that accountability ultimately rested with the individuals conducting the interviews. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was clear. The dialogue had opened doors to deeper reflection, challenging everyone involved to consider the human cost of chasing headlines. Through it all, Keanu kept moving forward, embracing each day with gratitude and purpose. He spent weekends exploring nature, finding peace in the simplicity of hiking trails and quiet lakes. At home, he immersed himself in creative projects, writing scripts, and sketching ideas for potential films. These moments of solitude reminded him why he loved storytelling: to connect with others, to share experiences, and to leave something meaningful behind. Friends noticed how content he seemed, describing him as someone who radiated calmness despite the chaos of the world around him. Even as the seasons changed, the ripple effects of that fateful night continued to unfold. For Keanu, it served as a reminder of the importance of staying true to oneself no matter the circumstances. He understood that fame came with challenges, but he refused to let negativity dictate his path. Instead, he chose to focus on the things that brought joy: his art, his relationships, and the simple pleasures of everyday life. And in doing so, he inspired countless others to do the same, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can create the biggest waves. By the time autumn rolled around again, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for Keanu Reeves. The controversy that had once consumed headlines was now a distant memory for most people, but its impact lingered in quieter, more profound ways. For Keanu, it wasn't just about surviving a difficult moment. It was about learning from it and using those lessons to shape his future. He carried the experience with him like a compass, guiding his decisions and reminding him of what truly mattered: kindness, authenticity, and staying grounded. The entertainment industry, too, continued to evolve in subtle yet significant ways. Talk shows became less reliant on shock value and more focused on meaningful conversations. Hosts who had once thrived on stirring drama began adopting a gentler tone, realizing that audiences craved connection over conflict. Even late-night comedians shifted their routines, trading biting sarcasm for humor rooted in empathy. It wasn't an overnight change, but it was noticeable. A slow, steady movement toward respecting boundaries while still entertaining. Keanu's quiet stand against unfair scrutiny had planted a seed, one that grew into a broader cultural shift. For the host involved in the incident, the journey was far from easy. She faced ongoing criticism from both viewers and colleagues, many of whom felt she hadn't done enough to address her misstep. Yet there were signs of growth. Her show began featuring segments that highlighted positivity, stories of resilience, community projects, and inspiring individuals making a difference. While some dismissed these efforts as performative, others saw them as genuine attempts to make amends. Over time, she started earning back some trust, though it was clear she would always carry the weight of that night with her. It served as a reminder that words have consequences, and rebuilding trust takes time. Keanu, meanwhile, kept his focus on the present. He avoided dwelling on the past, instead channeling his energy into projects that excited him. His latest film was released to critical acclaim, praised not only for its thrilling action sequences, but also for its heartfelt storytelling. Audiences connected deeply with the themes of perseverance and hope, qualities that resonated with Keanu's own life. At screenings and events, fans approached him with gratitude, not just for his work but for the way he handled himself during challenging times. "You inspire us to be better," one fan told him, clutching a photo signed by the actor. Keanu simply smiled, touched by their words but quick to deflect praise. To him, it wasn't about being a hero, it was about doing what felt right. Behind the scenes, Keanu's relationship with his girlfriend remained a source of strength and stability. They navigated the ups and downs of fame together, leaning on each other through moments of doubt and triumph. Their bond deepened as they continued to prioritize privacy and authenticity, refusing to let external pressures dictate their lives. Together, they explored new passions, traveling to lesser-known destinations, volunteering at local charities, and collaborating on creative endeavors. These shared experiences reminded them of why they cared so deeply for each other, strengthening their partnership in ways neither could have predicted. As winter approached, Keanu took time to reflect on the year that had passed. He realized how much he had grown, not just professionally but personally. The incident had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about fame, media, and human nature. But rather than letting it harden him, he chose to embrace the lessons it offered. He learned the importance of setting boundaries, speaking up when necessary, and leading by example. Most importantly, he reaffirmed his belief in the power of kindness, a simple yet transformative force that could bridge divides and heal wounds. The world around him seemed to echo this sentiment. Conversations about respect and accountability in media gained momentum, sparking debates about how society treated public figures. Journalists and producers began reevaluating their roles, asking themselves whether they were contributing to a culture of empathy or perpetuating harm. Some networks implemented guidelines to ensure interviews remained respectful, while others encouraged hosts to focus on uplifting stories rather than divisive ones. Though progress was slow, it was undeniable, a testament to the ripple effects of standing up for what you believe in. Through it all, Keanu stayed true to himself. He avoided seeking validation from others, choosing instead to measure success by the quality of his relationships and the integrity of his actions. When asked about his plans for the future, he spoke openly about his desire to keep growing, as an artist, as a person, and as someone committed to making a difference. "Life is about learning," he said in a rare interview. "Every day brings new challenges and opportunities. I'm just trying to stay open to them." His humility struck a chord with listeners, reinforcing the idea that greatness isn't about perfection, it's about striving to be better. Even as the seasons changed, Keanu found joy in the little things. He spent evenings reading scripts, practicing guitar, or taking long walks under the stars. These moments of solitude reminded him of the beauty and simplicity, the kind of peace that came from living authentically and staying grounded. Friends often remarked on how content he seemed, describing him as someone who radiated calmness despite the chaos of the world around him. To Keanu, happiness wasn't about avoiding challenges. It was about facing them with grace and purpose. Looking back, the incident had been a turning point, not just for him but for countless others who witnessed it. It sparked conversations about decency, fairness, and the responsibilities of fame. It reminded people that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their status or circumstances. And perhaps most importantly, it showed that even small acts of courage, like defending someone you love, could create ripples of change far beyond what anyone might expect. As snow began to fall, blanketing the city in a quiet stillness, Keanu stood at his window, gazing out at the peaceful scene. He thought about the journey he'd been on, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. He didn't consider himself extraordinary. He was just someone trying to do his best. But in doing so, he had inspired others to do the same. And in a world that often felt overwhelming, that was no small thing. With a soft smile, he turned away from the window, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. After all, life was full of possibilities, and Keanu intended to make the most of every single one.